Someone at the door said they're open during
There should be like a limited capacity for
Scoot back. Scoot back.
At one of the poles of the world, and there's not really much there. It's just white, desolate, and no one really visits it. In third year in architecture school, I had a professor named Gary McGavin who had actually visited Antarctica as after it was one of his lifelong dreams to actually visit, and he finally got to go. And he actually shared his visit with us through our PowerPoint slides, and that kind of got me interested. And then he actually talked about how he's actually worked with an organization called WISSARD, Whillans Ice Stream Subglacial research facility, or research drilling. And what they do is they do drilling in Antarctica, and they have a project that has just come up recently called WISSARD, Lake and Ice Stream Research Drilling, and for subglacial lakes. And he worked with them on designing a sub-ice rover, a SUR, to drill down into subglacial lakes that have just recently been found, that are actually a network of them in Antarctica, located all throughout the continent. And so what the U.S. and NASA have actually are starting to do is drill in one of the ice streams to one of the subglacial lakes, subglacial Lake Whillans. And what my project is going to be the facility that they can use to drill down to the subglacial lake. So as I was researching, I had found that there was a lot more to Antarctica than I had previously imagined, and I found how there's just a whole amount of layering to the continent, whether it's ice streams, ice flows, wind patterns, a wide range of weather, and on top of the ice and below, because it's actually moving. It's not just staying where it is at. So I had to incorporate that into my design because, or consider that, because what the current case studies are that I looked into, they are raising their facilities above the ice, keeping the snow from piling up, and it's called the snowdrift. And originally that's kind of how I wanted to go about designing, but I realized that that's not going to be the experience. That's not going to give me the experience that I wanted the users in Antarctica to feel, whether it's the administration personnel or the scientists or possibly even tourists one day. And what I found that I can submerge my pods, my building, into the ice, and they will get more of an experience of what it's like actually in Antarctica, whether it's the ice that's melting or moving, or the winds are like a storm, like a whiteout, where it's so white and there's so much snow and there's so much force that you can't even see a foot in front of your face, which is one of the biggest dangers in Antarctica. But what the people, or what the users in Antarctica can't really experience that because they have to go indoors into like an opaque shell that doesn't allow for any, or very little transparency. And I think that Antarctica is so unique that we need to start considering those factors and the elements into our design. And so what came up as a problem though when I submerged them is that they're just going to build up with the snowdrifts. So they're going to get submerged like every other pod or station that has previously been built in Antarctica. So I had to develop a system, or a couple systems, that would prevent that from happening. And so what I did was, because of the water in Antarctica, whenever they're drilling in their well to get the pure drinking water, they have to keep it constantly moving and heated, or otherwise it'll freeze no matter where it's at. So I took that principle and spread it throughout the framing of each pod. So each member is like a thermal membrane with heat, with water flowing throughout the entire pod, or that is constantly moving, and it will keep the framing and the spaces warm, as well as not allowing the water to freeze. And so this actually would prevent the ice building up, or the snow building up on the exterior of it, and it will allow it to melt and be captured into the framing and then recirculated throughout and turned into either drinking water or released back into the field. And then for the transparency, I would be using ETFE and panels to receive at least 95% light transmission, and it will allow for the users to actually get a better sense of the elements. However, because I am heating up the pod, the shell, it would actually melt and sink. And so originally I had designed a piling system, but after speaking with Gary McGavin, our structures professor, he said that the diagram that I can use is going to be the same, even though I'm not going to be piling. But what I can be using is called a heat pump. And so what the heat pump does is it transfers thermal energy from from the top of the heat pump to the bottom through a gas. And so as the gas rises, the heat from the pods will be trapped in the gas, and then it will lower down to a lower temperature as it sinks, and then it's a process that's constantly recycling. And so the pods themselves will not, at this level, will not sink because of a system like this. So you have my site plan with two main vestibules where the users will come in, take off their coats, and begin walking through the spaces. We have they're called the birthing quarters. They're kind of like living quarters or bedrooms in this area. Some administration right here, garage and fuel, the drilling core, some utilities and storage with medical, and then the main living quarters. That's the large one, where they can, where they would, whenever they're inside, they can come in, do like a rock climbing thing or play some ping pong, stuff like that.
What's the square footage of those structures?
Well, they range from about 2,500 to I guess 4,800. Yeah, and then we have an overall aerial of the site conditions, interior rendering, another section, and then diagrams. So we have the averages of typical like London, New York, and then the typical South Pole station, another Vostok station. This is a thermal imaging map showing how the framing will be, and the ETFE will be keeping the spaces warmer than the ice. This is a thermal collection and circulation diagram connecting with the ETFE and the wall section. And then this is a graphic showing the network of ice stations, and then some ice flows and route paths.
So Brian, what is the process that decides the shape of these pods?
Well, because of the site and it's Antarctica, and how I wanted the users to be able to view ice differently, and the elements, I thought that each pod needed to, depending on its interior spaces, needed to have different opportunities to view either the weather above the line or below the line as it melts. And
So this is like some kind of trying to imitate the nature, biomimicry, shapes are based on some kind of imitation of
I was
something
looking at
happened there.
glaciers and the formation of ice crystals,
Okay.
and I factor that into how I need to have the angles of the spaces to allow for the water collection to terminate.
How many people actually inhabit this?
A good question. The station, the typical stations in Antarctica, they have a summer team and a winter team. I designed this one so that it can be year-round, so a summer and a winter team. And so the winter team is a lot less, so it can be about 15 to 20, and it can expand all the way up to about 50 during the summer. And so what would happen during the winter is that the pods themselves could shut down during the winter. So this whole birthing pod right here could shut down, and you would only have this pod and this pod operating during the summer. And what I mean shut down is the thermal system can not provide as much heat because they won't have people inside.
I thought it was plastic.
Yeah, everything's nice. It's not.
Is it cold?
I think so.
Should got some paper towels.
I don't want this.
How do you get here? Do you fly here? Or do you...
Great question. So you have to fly down to South America, or that's typical, and then you can take a freighter over. Otherwise, you can have a cruise line. That's what tourists typically do. But what's typical for the personnel is they fly down to South America and then take the freight line to McMurdo Station. It's one of the large outposts, or the largest outpost that's actually run by the U.S. So South America, and then the McMurdo is about right there. And so once the personnel, the administration, or scientists, they get to here, they are then transported either via plane or tractor throughout the rest of the continent. And that's the typical journey that most people take. They can go to other stations, but it's typically research.
And what do other stations look like? Are they just metal boxes in the landscape? Or?
Yes, they're basically what is actually really common and current nowadays is lifted off the ground like this on hydraulic systems, so then they can be hoisted